Hello and welcome to my new video. Today we'll discuss excellent book of Ernst Haas, New York in Color. I bought this book as a present and I think this is one of the good books with the photography in color in 60s and 70s, and you can actually take a lot of inspiration from the techniques and how it works, and if you understand the technical part you can really make emulation of this type of photos. I think the main key feature of the style of the time, it's a low shutter speed and in the same time a little bit higher focal length, around 50mm or even 90mm. And what is actually completely uncommon in the modern times, almost everything shot on almost closed aperture, around 5.6 or f8. But because we're talking about early 60s, we're talking about positive color film. As always, this is one of the best films what you can find in terms of color and its original Kodachrome. And I think this type of photos is quite opposite to what you can get with the modern digital photography in general. Most of the modern cameras have incredible wide dynamic range and you can shoot almost in total darkness. And the capability of these cameras quite limit your imagination and it just have a different look. Kodachrome from the early days, as far as I understand, have incredibly low ISO. I think it starts from the ISO 25 and in the late batches it was pushed up to 60. So you can imagine how hard it was to shoot street photos with this incredibly low ISO. If you look in the photos, you can see motion blur of the people, so it means it was shot around 1/30th of the second or even lower. Over the years, I'm trying to implement this type of style in my daily life and daily photos, and especially with the leaf shutter cameras or Leica system, you can push up the boundaries of the shutter speed a little bit more. So I can say I can easily shoot with the ISO 100 and around f8 and with the shutter speed 1/45 of the second or 1/30th of the second. And with the combination of the compression of the lens and semi-closed aperture, it gives you this distinct look of the motion blur which you can find in the movies, because shutter speed of the 1/30th of the second is actually quite close to the cinema shutter speed. I think over the time with the digital cameras and automatic cameras, your focus shifts a little bit from Sunny 16 rule to the more automatic rules of setting up any type of shutter speeds and rely on the aperture ring most of the time. But probably, as you understand, photographers of the time doesn't really have or never use the light meter. So if you have a Kodachrome with the ISO 25, you just set up the camera to 1/25th of the second, and if it's cloudy, you can shoot on f8, if it's sunny, it's 16, and if it's overcasted day, just put f5.6. And close to the evening, you just fully open aperture as much as your aperture allow you. For example, in my case, you can put even 1.2. And this is actually how to create this amazing look. Because Kodachrome and the positive film in general doesn't really have a dynamic range, you're almost certain losing the blacks. And the blacks on all of these pictures looks a little bit like a fade black and not pure black. It's also kind of a unique look because it's not pure black, it's a little bit bluish tint for all of the pictures, especially in the shadows. If you compare it to the Fujifilm, I think it has a little bit different cast and a little bit different layer distribution even at that time, and I think it was less popular over the years. Unfortunately, I'm not really interested in the positive film, and unfortunately I don't really have experience in that. And probably these positive types of films, it's quite rare, and most of the time you cannot really achieve the same look what you have in the 60s. I think really cool alternative to this type of look if you want to achieve something similar, it's actually the Kodak Ektar 100. If you ask me about the advice how to get this look, it's actually quite simple. First of all, you need to shoot the film as ISO 50, and in the same time you need to push the film at least 2 stops. And if you push it too much, because Ektar in principle not really pushable film, and in this case combination of the overexposure and overdevelopment will give you incredibly rich colors, and in the same time you basically will ruin all the blacks and create a huge contrast in the picture. And with the small magic in the final print, you can achieve relatively close results. And the second part of the look, it's quite often misunderstood and everybody talking about the reds. And yes, reds on this film is amazing. But I think the dynamic of the reds, it's not really perfect. It's just a beautiful short spectrum, and it's quite separation of the color between the reds and the rest of the colors. As you can probably understand, this is a dice, it's not really digital, and the look of the film quite depends on which chemical they use in the 60s and how it was developed and what you actually scan afterwards. I can only describe it as a compression of color, so you basically have a huge separation between the colors, but in the same time the gradation of the single color is quite huge. And honestly, I don't really understand why everybody hating the Kodak Ektar film. It's quite amazing film for the special task, you just need to know how to cook it. And I think most of the time it's misunderstood film because it has strange look if you not push the boundaries and do not try to create a little bit of pushy look on an actor. Always it's quite fascinating to look how the photographer actually flexing the color there. It's just a simple photos of the oil splash on the street without kind of any composition, but in the same time you can see how much color this film is capturing. It's something about like how natural it looks like for your eye, and I think it's more about the color perception and color depth. And I think it's quite amazing to have this quality of the prints in the book, this quality of the paper. But in the same time, for example, if you're living in Vienna, Austria, you can visit the live exhibition of this artist. And I think consuming different types of formats made as a book or as a print on the wall have completely different experience. As always, I cannot say I like most of the pictures in the book, but this is not what the book is all about. I really like the consistency of the color, consistency of the composition in the book, and some of the pages actually amazingly laid out as a pair of page. And also what I like about this book, it's not fully blown project book, it's just a book about the New York City and the things happening in the city. And just playing around with the early color photography and trying to explore this vast field of color. And also, because it's positive film, you can see direct projections from the film on the wall, and this is also quite nice experience, and I don't really know if you can still do it from the originals on any type of exhibitions, but anyway, I will put the link on the author in the description below. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos.